Welcome back to Jake 3D, and today we're going to discuss net neutrality, one of the most important and yes, possibly the most boring topics today. So what is net neutrality and why should you care? Let's start right there. With net neutrality, your ISP, your internet service provider, the company that provides your internet, cannot slow down or block websites and services you use on the internet, no matter what it is. This prevents AT&T from slowing down Netflix so that their DirecTV Now service has a better standing or better foot in their market, or Comcast from slowing it down so that their on-demand services or TV services look better. That's kind of a quick TLDR of what net neutrality is and does.
One of the issues here is whether or not we treat broadband like a utility. And if it's treated like a utility, the requirement is that you, as the provider, are not allowed to put your finger on the scale and slow one person down or speed somebody else up.
Before I continue, credit where credit is due. There are several other creators that have also posted videos on net neutrality. I especially like John Oliver on Last Week Tonight and Barnacules Nerdgasm videos on the subject. They have many of the same sources, so go ahead and give them a look. I have linked several videos down in the description, even more than that. Some of them are even less boring than me. I've gotten several arguments and opinions recently against regulation of the internet, or of net neutrality. The kind of absolutism that is only designed to ignore the issue and promote an agenda. First, why is the internet important? For most of you, that's a silly question. And yes, I agree, it is rather silly. However, there are those that do not understand the fact that internet is essential in today's modern world. Even Ajit Pai, Trump's new head of the FCC, with his war on net neutrality, agrees that the internet is essential. Roughly 3/4 of Americans, or about 77%, now own a smartphone, and as we all should know, smartphones use the internet. An ongoing 16-year study from 2000 to 2016 from Pew Research Center showed that 13% of adults do not use the internet. And of those 13%, 4 in 10 were above 65, and another 1 in 10 were above 50. The internet started via government funds and research as ARPANET in the 60s. It grew in scope and complexity with universities and college networks. The internet came to the common consumer via existing common carrier infrastructures. That'd be your telephone lines and your Bell telephone lines that were in the 80s already existing as common carrier infrastructure. This was under Title II regulations of the 1934 Communications Act. Title II of the Communications Act of 1934 is what gives our current regulations protection under net neutrality. Ajit Pai is trying to reclassify ISPs under the less constrictive Title I as they were before 2015. This would allow ISPs to go back to the way they were serving customers prior to 2015. Comcast, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, Metro PCS, and many other internet service providers have been caught with their pants down, acting in anti-consumer ways. In fact, we arrived at our current Title II restrictions because under Title I, ISPs were violating regulations set by the FCC that could not be enforced under Title I. Verizon sued the FCC to prevent them from regulating their business under the Title I and suggested if they wanted to have stronger restrictions that they should switch over to Title II. And that's just what happened in 2015. Ajit Pai is well aware of this because he is a former Verizon lawyer and has spent years with the FCC.
And I just want to pose a hypothetical to you. Sure. Let's just say Comcast created a new TV series, and it just so happened that that competed with a Netflix series very similarly.
It's important to know here that AT&T owns DirecTV, and it has a service like Netflix called DirecTV Now. Comcast also has their cable shows and their competing on-demand services. T-Mobile and Verizon also have similar video streaming services or contracts with their partners that also compete with Netflix, YouTube, similar services.
And I just want to pose a hypothetical to you.
Sure.
Let's just say Comcast created a new TV series, and it just so happened that that competed with a Netflix series very similarly. If these rules go away, how is there not an incredible incentive for Comcast to slow Netflix down coming into my house and make their video, the Comcast video, very robust?
So under that hypothetical, one of the things that's important to remember is that it is a hypothetical.
So he says this is a hypothetical when it clearly is a real-world analog.
One of the things that's important to remember is that it is a hypothetical, that we don't see evidence of that happening in the marketplace on a widespread level.
There have been some examples of ISPs blocking certain things. The Google Wallet was blocked, Skype was blocked, one Canadian telecom blocked pro-labor sites. I mean, it's not like this doesn't happen.
Well, there are isolated cases.
There are actually more than just a few isolated cases. Here are a few cases of ISPs messing around where they shouldn't be, as they shouldn't be. First, in late 2013 and early 2014, Netflix speed was slowed down in a mob-like shakedown by Comcast and several other major ISPs. Their true speed was only restored when they paid protection money to Comcast. It's important to note that the slowdown was artificial in nature, and Comcast was receiving the full speed, just not delivering it to their customers. At the time, I did have Comcast, and when I was streaming Netflix to my TV under several different devices, I was always getting that loading screen. I called Comcast and said, hey, what's the deal? I'm paying for internet. I want to watch the internet. They said, let's up your speed. So we did that. It did decrease the loading time for Netflix in some cases, but even when nobody was on the internet except for Netflix, I was still having issues. And at the time, I was getting 50 megabits per second, way more than enough for a 1080p stream from Netflix. So I called Comcast back and they said, oh, the slowdown is on Netflix side, but we have on-demand and stream picks, which you have. Go ahead and use that. You're gonna get pretty much the same service as Netflix, which isn't true. Netflix definitely offers quite a bit that the on-demand and stream picks did not offer, and Netflix I was already paying for, where a lot of the on-demand things were pay to play. So just another way that Comcast has been acting extremely shady. After Netflix had paid Comcast, we didn't have very many issues with Netflix at all, even when several people were online having multiple streams of Netflix. A 2002 report from the Body of European Regulators for Electronic Communications found that violations of net neutrality affected at least 1 in 5 users in Europe. The report found that blocked or slowed down connections to services like VoIP, peer-to-peer technologies, gaming applications, email were commonplace by ISPs in Europe. Now, obviously, we aren't in Europe, but I bring this up for 2 specific reasons. First, if ISPs are doing this all over Europe, then they're certainly willing to do that in the US. And second, services that originate from overseas, like overseas websites, downloads, games, etc., can be slowed if our international partners don't have strong net neutrality laws in place as well. Now, let's take a look at several other examples of ISPs doing shady things in the US. In 2005, ISP Madison River Communications blocked VoIP services. Also in 2005, Comcast again secretly blocked peer-to-peer file sharing applications without disclosing this fact to its customers. From 2007 to 2009, AT&T forced Apple to block Skype and other VoIP services. The Google Voice app received similar treatment when it came online in 2009. In 2011, Metro PCS announced plans to block video streaming services from all sources except YouTube. From 2011 to 2013, AT&T, Sprint, and Verizon blocked Google Wallet because it competed with their mobile payment service called ISIS. In 2012, the FCC caught Verizon Wireless blocking people from using tethering applications, which were circumventing Verizon's $20 tethering fee. By blocking those applications, Verizon violated a net neutrality pledge it made to the FCC as a condition of the 2008 Airwaves action. In 2012, AT&T blocked FaceTime from its customers' iPhones unless they subscribed to a more expensive text and voice plan. During oil agreements in Verizon versus FCC in 2013, Verizon counsel Helgi Walker had this to say: "I'm authorized to state from my client today that but for these rules, we would be exploring those types of arrangements." The TLDR here is that Verizon would slow down services, content, and websites, if not block them entirely, if they got rid of or changed the open internet policies of the time. Comcast recently has tried to shut down the website COMCASTROTURF, which is designed to check to see if your name has been stolen and used in anti-net neutrality comments by bots on the FCC website. These are not isolated cases.
One of the things that's important to remember is that it is a hypothetical, that we don't see evidence of that happening in the marketplace on a widespread level. There are isolated cases.
Actually, no, these are not isolated cases.
Nothing about the internet was broken in 2015. Nothing about the law had changed. And there was not a rash of internet service providers blocking consumers from accessing the content, applications, or services of their choice.
So blocking Netflix and other services just doesn't count then, huh?
The more heavily you regulate something, the less of it you're going to get. And when you talk about less infrastructure investment, many people's eyes glaze over. But I think it's important to explain in plain terms what the consequences are. Reduced investment means fewer Americans will have high-speed internet access.
In fact, recently, both local ISPs here have increased internet speeds for my area. CenturyLink has about doubled their speeds, and Comcast speeds are more than 10 times faster of what is available to me, and this is with the current net neutrality still in effect, I remind you.
Sure enough, infrastructure investment declined. Among our nation's 12 largest internet service providers, domestic broadband capital expenditures decreased by 5.6%, or $3.6 billion between 2014 and 2016, the first 2 years of the Title II era.
Okay, to be fair, infrastructure is a rather hard thing to measure. A big part of this is because investment decisions are made between 1 and 3 years ahead of time, typically. However, infrastructure investment has increased by 5.3%. That's almost $7.3 billion. That's billion with a B, dollars. This data is according to publicly traded broadband providers companies' SEC filings for the 2-year span of 2015 to 2016. This increase is above the 2013 to 2014 2-year span. So in the last 2 years, it has increased by 5.3%, or over $7 billion.
Sure enough, infrastructure investment declined.
The Huffington Post reported on December 9th, 2014, Verizon's CFO said to investors, even if the networks were to be reclassified as Title II, the net neutrality proceedings would not harm or influence investment.
Sure enough, infrastructure investment declined.
TechCrunch reported that several companies are on record saying that their businesses have largely been unaffected by the order, and what drops did occur did not seem to be in a direct relationship to the order. And of course, that order is the Title II classification we have currently. Now, here are some quotes from an ARS Technica article. In December 2015, AT&T's CEO told investors the company would deploy more fiber in 2016 than it did in 2015, and that Title II would not impede its future business plans. In December 2016, Comcast chief financial officer admitted to investors that any concerns it had about reclassification were based only on the fear that Title II could have meant more than what it actually meant. That same month, Charter's CEO told investors, Title II did not really hurt us. It hasn't hurt us. Just a few days after the election, Cablevision and Suddenlink's parent company, Altris, reaffirmed its plan to deploy fiber to the home service to all of its customers and told investors it remained focused on upgrading our broadband networks to drive increases in broadband speeds and better customer experiences.
Sure enough, infrastructure investment declined.
Let's not forget that one person's regulation is another person's opportunity. Businesses that change and innovate with the changing market and regulations, thrive and grow. Without these rules, you could go to google.com and get a message like this. You must subscribe to our search providers package in order to get this subscription. How about when you go to YouTube or Netflix, you get the subscribe to our streaming package? Or when you try to access the public library, you might even get a message that says you need to pay more for our basic public services package. But access to our own services, you can have at no additional fee. John Oliver of Last Week Tonight set up the website Go FCC Yourself that redirects you to where you can leave a comment on the FCC website rather than the 8-step process that the FCC set up.
Once more unto the breach, my friends. Simply go to this URL and tell the FCC to preserve net neutrality and Title II.
So you can go to the website Go FCC Yourself, then select Express. On this page, you can fill out your real name and contact information. And now, this does need to be your real information because it is a public comment and publicly viewable. In the comments, you would need to say something along the lines of, I support net neutrality under the current Title II regulations and tell the FCC not to deregulate ISPs. You can then go to, if you prefer, battleforthenet.com. There you can fill out your name and contact info again, and they will send a letter to the FCC on your behalf. This letter is pre-populated with your support for net neutrality, but you can add, edit, change, or even clear and write your own statement. And they'll go ahead and send that for you. Now, it is our job, our obligation, it's our duty as the people to ensure the social contract is fulfilled by making the government work with us and not over us. Contact your congressmen and representatives. Do not let Ajit Pai and the FCC roll back these regulations, these very necessary regulations. Let's not forget that without these net neutrality rules, ISPs are free to censor the internet. You are trying to go to the public library. You can't access it because your ISP says you must pay more to access basic government services. Or you want to go to CNN or Fox or ABC or BBC's website, but you can't access it because your ISP has denied you access to that website because they don't like a report that's on there. Or there's a website that says, oh, okay, Comcast is doing this, so Comcast blocks that website. Or AT&T is doing this, so AT&T blocks that website. You don't know. You can't go there and see it. You can't be informed of that information. So if your ISP is allowed to censor you, then you're not going to know. So very, very important to not let that happen. There's always more I'd like to say here, but there's only so much room and so much time to give you as much information as I can. If there's something I left out, there's something important that you would like to discuss, if there's a question that you have, please leave it in the comments or hit me up on Twitter. Let me know. This is a very important topic, a very important subject, and we cannot let this go the wrong way. We need these net neutrality rules to stay in effect. I want to invite you to go down into the comments and discuss this with me. Let me know what you have to say. Let me know what I left out. Let me know any questions that you have. I'd be happy to answer it for you. Hit me up on Twitter. as always, if you want to go ahead and hit that subscribe button, I would appreciate it. But share this information. Share it online, share it offline. Let people know. Get people active. Make sure that people understand what is going on here. And of course, as always, thank you very much for watching Jake 3D, and I will see you in the next one. See, I've got my serious shirt on today.